I've often heard it said that everything is better with a good night's sleep. But for a lot of orphans, that isn't possible simply because they don't even have a bed. We're going to hear about a ministry today called Sweet Sleep that is all about a bed for every head.
Stay tuned. Bridges starts now.
I'm glad that you could join us for Bridges today. I'm Monica Schmelter, and we're going to be taking a look at an outreach, a ministry called Sweet Sleep. And I want to welcome you, Madeline, to the program today.
Well, thank you for having us.
Glad to have you. And Jen, it's so good to have you as well.
Thank you. Glad
Now,
to be here.
when I hear the word Sweet Sleep, Madeline, I think, oh, this is awesome. We all want to have a good night's sleep. But tell me what your outreach really is about.
Sure. Sweet Sleep is a ministry that shows God's love to orphaned and abandoned children around the world by providing a bed to them. We also provide a Bible, and where malaria is prevalent, we provide a mosquito net. While we do this, we share the gospel. We teach them about God and His love, and that God is as near as their next breath, and that when they pull the covers up around their shoulders, that it's like God giving them a hug. A bed is a place where children go to hide and to pray and to just be safe. And so Sweet Sleep shows them that through the bed and through God that they are safe and they're loved.
Yeah, and it's so necessary. I mean, sleep is such an important part of our life and an important part of growing up. Jen, how did you two people from around here become involved in really going all over the world and providing beds for every head?
Well, Sweet Sleep was something that came as a result of really God calling me into ministry. 10 years ago, I went on a mission trip with a local church, and we were serving with this orphanage in Moldova. It was the largest orphanage in the country. There were 700 kids living there, and we spent the week working with them, and I saw their beds. They were really, I call them metal hammocks, because they're about the size of a cot. The metal springs were broken. The kids would tie the holes with rope or shoelace so that the thin cotton mattresses wouldn't fall between the holes. And I was broken for that. The smells that went with it, just those things that wouldn't leave me. And I would walk around just asking God what it was He wanted me to see from that time. And then I knew it had something to do with the children's sleep. And one night during our team prayer time, one of the team members was praying for the children to have sweet sleep. And that's where the name came from. And I just started to cry, and I knew that God was moving me into this ministry, but I didn't know that it was a ministry. I just felt like it was something I was supposed to come back and respond to. And so I came home and began advocating for the children and telling about the needs, and took a team back and then just started working with boys who are aging out to do a vocational training program to build the beds, and one thing kind of just evolved into another, and there was another orphanage waiting after that, and another after that, and all of this work was happening in Eastern Europe, and so suddenly Sweet Sleep became a full-time ministry, and then I guess about 5 years into our ministry, we expanded into Haiti. And then Madeline kind of came along. God brought Madeline along.
Now, Madeline, how did you get involved?
Well, Sweet Sleep has this really great opportunity each holiday season where you can give the gift of sweet sleep. And it was one Christmas that I wanted to do something more, something impactful for Christmas. So I gave beds in honor of my family members to everybody, and with that I began really looking into Sweet Sleep, and I watched the videos and I learned more, and God just broke me for the work that was being done. After that Christmas, my involvement began simply with going on a mission journey to Uganda, and you know, I knew there that God had called me into ministry, and that not just going, but He had called me into prayer for this ministry and into work domestically for this ministry, and my involvement just grew from that.
So you started out just by wanting to do something for Christmas.
I did.
In honor of your family members, and it grew from there.
It did.
And really, Jen, you're kind of saying the same thing. You had a heart to go on this missions trip, and then you saw the need and how huge the need is. Could you take just a moment, Jen, to explain really how big this need is? Because I think sometimes we hear, you know, I went on a missions trip, I saw these orphans and they were suffering, but really we're talking about lots and lots of orphans, aren't we?
We are. globally, and the number is something that no one's really 100% sure. It changes every day. Just about every day, there's about 5,760 children who will become orphans. That means they wake up in the morning having a mom or a dad, and they'll go to bed that night.
What was that number you said again?
It's 5,760 children.
So 5,760 children will wake up
Every
today
single day.
and become orphans today. And how does that happen? I mean, are parents giving them away?
It's a combination of a lot of things. You know, orphans, the definition really is, you know, there's a single orphan, there's a double orphan, meaning that you have lost one or both parents. There's also just what we call social orphan, parents who love their children and would want to care for them, want to provide for them, but are just so desperate, they cannot provide for them. And so they're at a loss of being able to do that. They love them enough to want to have the best for their child, and so they do what they know that they can do. They take them to an orphanage and they abandon them there, really. But it's not their heart's desire. It's just a situation of their circumstances. And really, that's what we have seen over this last decade of ministry. When we started in Eastern Europe, we were just giving beds to children, and children were writing us letters and telling us what their beds meant to them. It was a place for them to go and to feel safe and to dream.
Children write that to you?
Yeah, they have beautiful words, these children, and the beds mean so much to them, because when our children are afraid at night, our bed is a comfort to us. You know, we sit with our kids when they're sick, when they're afraid, when they have bad dreams, and these children are in these beds that are harmful to them and their development, and they don't have anyone to comfort them. So when we give them these beds, and like Madeline was talking about, telling them, and these beds are a physical reminder of God's love for them and that God's near to them, and that this blanket is really like God wrapping his arms around them and hugging them. That's a mental picture that stays with the kids. And then globally, we've really, over the last decade, have come to understand what the impact of a bed is. And that is, it's really the fullness of the ministry of Sweet Sleep. We have provided beds to children living in internally displaced persons camps, IDP camps, so that those children come out of those predatory camps and move into their families' tribal homelands.
Now, when you say like a predatory children's camp, maybe, Madeline, you could help me to understand what that is. I know predatory is not a good word, but I don't know what that means or what that looks like. And what I would like to do for people today is to paint a picture of what children over this globe are, what kind of conditions they're living in, what that's like for them, and maybe, Madeline, how, like you did, step up to help at Christmas or a gift in honor of our family, how we could help. What is a predatory children's camp?
Well, where we're speaking of right now is in northern Uganda, where there had been a 24 or so year civil war. And children were being abducted and being forced to serve as soldiers against in a rebel army. So in order to protect the civilians, the government put everybody in IDP camps. In northern Uganda, there are not orphanages by and large. They are children living in child-headed households. So these children are raising children in these huts in IDP camps. They're predatory because they have become dilapidated and run down. The war is over, peace has come back to the region, but there are still people living in these camps because they're afraid to leave. They don't know anything outside of the camp.
Okay.
Within that camp, though, there may be, they're just adults who mean harm to children. And so they're, there's just...
Well, I guess then, like, the predatory people know that there are child-headed homes in these camps, and that's a place, if you're going to do harm, that's an easy place to go in and do it, because it's just kids raising kids.
Well, and you're exactly right. Really, predatory is a global problem for orphans. And when you have a child with a watchful eye over them, they're cared for. There's someone that's aware of their life, and they're protected. And when you have children who do not have a watchful eye over them, then that child becomes preyed upon by traffickers, by terrorists, terrorist groups, by militant groups, by all sorts of people who mean ill things toward just a society. And so orphans are very much preyed upon globally. And so what we have discovered through Sweet Sleep is that in so many parts of the world, a bed, something that you and I would take for granted.
Absolutely.
A bed is a status symbol, really, and that you will work your whole life to provide for food for that day, to get through that day, for a roof over your head, health care, for being able to send your children to school, maybe even. And to have a bed, that's just a luxury that's not necessary. However, we've discovered in our 10 years that really the bed is changing for that. In one of the orphanages we have worked in, the very first orphanage we ever worked in Africa, we gave those children mosquito nets because malaria is such a huge problem there. And within 6 months of giving the kids nets there, we learned so many things. The orphanage director, the head nurse, the head teacher were telling us that the children were sleeping better, so they were instantly learning better, but that the children had not developed malaria because of the protective nets.
So they're healthier.
They're healthier. But then also, they were not having to test and treat them for malaria. So they had been able to take that money that they were using, and they were able to provide fruit and meat for the children weekly. So they were living better overall. And
just from having a bed. We've got to take a little break. We want you to stay with us, though. We're going to take a little look at Sweet Sleep.
Madeline Metcalf.
And I'm Jen Gash, and 10 years ago, God took me to a little corner of the world called Moldova. I was there on a mission trip, or so I thought, but really it turned into the ministry of Sweet Sleep. I came back home and began advocating for these children. And I began advocating for the way that God had called me to see their needs, and that was through providing them a bed. I knew that God had called me to Moldova to provide beds for the children. And so they asked how much a bed was, and I told them that it was $30. And over the last 10 years, that $30 has multiplied time and time again, and God has used that to grow Sweet Sleep into a ministry that is recognized globally.
What started with the vision of one person and one gift has turned into 10 years of incredible ministry. Sweet Sleep has provided close to 20,000 beds around the world to orphaned and abandoned children. What began in Moldova then spread to Haiti, and then to Uganda and South Africa, and most recently in the last 3 years we've been in the United States. Because of our incredible volunteer force, we were able to mobilize 2 54-foot semi-truck trailers full of disaster relief items, including over 200 beds, to be sent down to Oklahoma following the devastating tornadoes. We couldn't have done any of this work without over 50,000 volunteer hours of people serving in the United States and in all of the countries where we've been working for these 10 years.
When Sweet Sleep first started providing beds to orphans in Moldova, really it was about a bed, and it was about giving hope and love to children. And then over the years, God really took that and showed us that there was more. And we, like you, believe that children belong in families and that God did not create children to be in orphanages. With that belief, we've been praying and asking God, what does this mean, and how can Sweet Sleep respond to this, and how can Sweet Sleep use what we do, use the beds that we provide for ministry to serve as a catalyst to move children into homes. So God is responding to that and showing us his plan and the fullness of the ministry of Sweet Sleep as we launch into something exciting and new.
If you would like to purchase a copy of today's show for $15, you can send a check to the address on your screen or call us at 615-754-0039. Be sure to mention the program number on the screen. If you would like to contact WHTN, you can write to the address on the screen or call us at 615-754-0039 or visit us on the web at www.ctntv.org.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
you are just joining us today on Bridges, we are talking about Heart for One, which is a part of Sweet Sleep. And as I understand it, Madeline, you all really started with Sweet Sleep and learned a whole lot by providing beds to orphans, and that kind of led you into this next juncture, Heart for One.
Yes.
Tell me about that, if you would.
Well, sure. Over these years, we have come to learn so much about the orphan crisis and about what God has in mind for these children. We've learned that the majority of these children have parents that could care for them if they had the wherewithal to do so. Through our travel, we've also seen the bed act as a catalyst for change. And late last year, we found a solution. We found what God was really calling us to. Globally, orphanages are being closed, and governments in every country are looking for solutions to that. And a ministry model that we found has been successful in placing over 20,000 children into homes over the last 10 years, using integrated social services where families are given something that helps sustain themselves, whether it's startup capital or whether it is vocational training. So these parents are able to care for their children in the home. And children are being placed back in the home. Child abandonment is prevented, and ultimately the family is being preserved.
Yeah. Now, Jen, just to kind of recap on that, I think what we're saying here for those of you that are watching is that a lot of orphans globally have moms and dads that love them and want to provide for them. It's just that they're unable to. Is that correct?
It is. It's really the social orphan concept that we were talking about, and just when you do not have enough money to provide food for your children, you know, when you cannot, you don't have a job, there's an absentee father, and you're a single mom, and you're sick, and you know, there's just a lot of things working against you. You don't have community because everyone's in the same place, and also we've learned. We just really, as a society, lack parenting skills. I have a daughter from Eastern Europe, and I feel like I need parenting classes every day. You know, it's hard. It's hard.
Well, parenting is very, very
it's the
difficult.
toughest job ever. And if you have no resources, it's that much more difficult. And so we've also been able to use our beds as, really our beds are a catalyst for change. And so we have offered parenting classes for caregivers to come in and learn parenting skills, to just have tools in their community, in their toolbox, tools in their toolbox to build community with other mothers, with other caregivers, and that's been changing. We've had mamas tell us stories about literally just punching their children in the face because they didn't know that there was another way, and they learned from these caregiving classes that there was another way, how to discipline a child, and all of that is because there was a need for a bed, and that was something that
was your entry point.
That was the entry point.
Because I would imagine, you know, we're people, and no matter where we live, we're people. That's just how we are. And to talk to a parent, you can't punch your kid in the face, might be a difficult place to start, even though that's true. But
especially
you're saying
if that's how they were raised, which is always a situation.
And if that's what parents see, I mean, it sounds crazy to us, perhaps, but if that's how you've been living and that's what's been passed down generation after generation, then. And if that was me, that's what I would think was the right way. But you're saying you can come on the scene with this bed, and then that opens the door for more conversation.
Absolutely. And so we have just seen so many times when mamas will come in with their babies, or moms and dads will come in with their little one by the hand to an orphanage director or the pastor of a church where there's an orphanage, and just say, I cannot care for this child anymore. I love this child, but I can't care for them, and I feel like they're better here. And we didn't know an answer until God showed that to us last year. But we've seen the fullness of the work of Sweet Sleep over the last decade, and so now we have put into place programs that are working indigenously in each country. We're working here in the United States even through Children's Services and helping to keep that family unit intact and build and support community around that family unit.
Well, and you know, because that's what God would want.
Yes.
If there's a way for the family to stay together, that's what God wants. Absolutely. You know, if mom and dad or mom or just dad are willing to love, provide, protect, nurture, that's the best situation for a child. So you're saying with Heart for One, you've just learned to help people who say, I really love my kid, I just can't keep them financially. And I understand that a lot of people are really catching this vision, so to speak, with you, because you've got this, is it matching funds or what is it to help Heart for One reunite kids with parents? What is that about?
Well, yes, we have a very generous match grant that's been offered to us by someone who really understands the importance of the family preservation and sees the way God is moving through Sweet Sleep and through the provision of the bed and just through the programs that we've put in place. So we currently have a match grant of $150,000 to put this next group of children into homes. We have identified 1,000 children and 1,000 families who are ready to be reunited.
So they're apart right now?
They are.
And they can be reunited?
They can. They're waiting in emerging communities. And so this match grant is to provide for those first 1,000 families to be restored.
So they're just waiting for people like me and people like you and for people like you who are watching to say, I would like to give. Is that right?
Yes.
To give these families the tools and the resources to get back together. And you know, Jen, there may be people who are watching who still yet don't quite understand how you can make a statement, you know, I punch my kids in the face because, you know, gosh, that's how I grew up, or I really love them, but I can't keep them. But I think of all the things that most of us in this country have. You know, we have somewhat of a better example, most of us, than that. You know, when our kids grow up and graduate from high school, we give them graduation parties so that they can have money. And we're talking about a lot of times communities that don't have those resources. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a struggle for people. Just, we are very blessed and very fortunate here. And then globally, there's so many people that just that struggle with things that we can't understand. And, you know, I think about it when I read the Bible. I think, gosh, and I say this a lot, but when I read a lot of things in the Bible, I'm like, that's great. It doesn't make sense to me necessarily. And I just take it in faith. But when I step outside of myself, when I step outside of my community here, and I'm on the field with these people who are brothers and sisters of ours.
Yes.
The Bible makes perfect sense to them because that's their life and they're living that every single day. So these stories that we don't understand that we take in faith are their lives. And they understand God as a true provider and a true father. And that's the message that we share with the children, that we share with families. And so it is exciting to come in and to be able to partner, to link arms with these people working locally. We have a lot of partners that you've heard of before, but then also a lot of partners that are indigenous, that are working in their own countries to try to help the people there. And so that's an amazing thing that we get to do. For Heart for One, it's an amazing small number. It's a lot of money, but it's not that much money. It's $385, and that for an entire year as these caregivers go through vocational training and their social services provided and food and safety and shelter, all of that for an entire year. Is
$385 for an entire year?
Yeah, and well, it takes that child and it puts that child back into a family. And really a family unit is about 5 people. So it's really affecting 5 people.
Absolutely.
And it's bringing them to sustainability, self-sustainability. So they can, it's not a repetitive thing, it's a one and done, and that family is changed forever. And you do enough of that with enough families and you've changed a community. And then you do enough of that and you change a country, and then we change the world. And so really, that's what Heart for One is. It is giving an opportunity for orphans to become sons and daughters.
Yes. And impacting really the world and generations to come, because the next generation will see the family units intact. And, you know, the role modeling and the teaching and the caring and the giving that go on and the educating in families, then that will be passed down rather than the poverty and the violence and just all of the things that have been going on. So I just want to make sure I understood, Madeline, because we have just a little bit of time left. It's just $385 to reunite a family?
It is. It's $385, and it takes about a year, and that includes follow-up afterwards, and then the family is made whole. The family is self-sustaining, and we can move on to the next family to create the same.
And to continue doing this. I want to thank you both for coming today and for joining us. We'll be back with more in just a moment. If you need more information, just check the website on the screen.
Heart for One is a ministry of sweet sleep that focuses entirely on family preservation. Through our work, we've learned that millions of children are social orphans. This means that they have parents or extended family who could care for them if given the right resources. Using integrated social services, Heart for One is working through the church to encourage Indigenous adoption, child abandonment prevention, and child reintegration around the world. Heart for One's family preservation solution has already been successful in placing over 20,000 children into families. Right now, Heart for One has identified 1,000 families who are ready to begin the restoration process to give them economic empowerment, family preservation, hope, and dignity. But just like everything else over the last 10 years, we can't do this without you. Heart for One is changing the world. It's changing the orphan crisis, and it's changing poverty.
God has brought along so many of you to help Sweet Sleep change and save the lives of orphans around the world. As we celebrate all God has done over the last 10 years, we look forward to seeing all of the ways that God will use you in being involved for the next 10 years, starting right now.
Check out www.ctntv.org. You can watch us streaming live, find out more about your favorite shows, learn how to create your own commercial spot, and join our prayer community. Be sure to visit www.ctntv.org today.
WHTN has helped local churches and ministries launch television ministries for years. Are you thinking about expanding into television ministry? WHTN has an all-new HD studio. It's affordable for local churches and ministries. You can contact WHTN for more information on our website, ctntv.org.
Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Monica Speaks TV today.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
You know, as you watched the interview today, you saw that we talked about orphans and how to best meet their needs to help them live as sons and daughters. And you know, a lot of us will look at something like that and say, you know, I'll just pray about what I should do. And certainly prayer is good and it's needful. But you know, the Bible also says that true religion before God is to care for the widows and the orphans. So the prayer is not, should I help? The prayer needs to be, God, what exactly would you have me as an individual, as a family, as a church, what exactly would you have us to do? God wants us to reach out to the orphans. He wants us to make a difference in this world. Every child that is alive on planet Earth is made in the image of God, and God wants them cared for. And this is an opportunity that we can step up and honor and love the children that God created and loves so much. Thanks for joining us. We've got to go, but we say goodbye and God bless you.
Thanks for watching Bridges.